Hello, everybody. We're back. We are at Silverstone, my home Grand Prix. I'm feeling it this weekend. The third of a triple header. It has been a long 3 weeks. I'm not going to lie to you. Austria, we were live 5 different times for all of the different sessions. Luckily, not a sprint weekend this weekend in Silverstone. And next weekend, a little bit of a break before Hungary. And then, of course, Spa before the summer break. But let's focus back in on Silverstone. Say hello to everybody in the chat. Hello, Lofi. How you doing? Vardan in the chat. Eclipse, Bow, Sally, of course, joins us here every single... I feel like Sally's been here for like 5 years at this point. Been here right from the beginning. Line, Friendly FG. How you doing? Dark One, Dia, LOL. What was that? Mark my words. Mazepin Pole, Latifi P2, Pastor Maldonado P3. I mean, none of those drivers... Oh, actually, Latifi and Mazepin shared the grid with one another for a little while in a very strange couple of seasons. Pretins in the chat. Jamie, hello. Walker in there as well. Lando win after Verstappen crashes him out. Okay. Thunder, Kermit the Smaug. Excellent name. Sky, how we doing? How are we all feeling? Are we ready for some Silverstone? I do like Silverstone, one of the more high-speed tracks of the Formula 1 calendar. Of course, a historic track in Formula 1 as well. I want to say there's been like 75 Grand Prix, 76 Grand Prix, something along those lines. I was reading an article about it. The British Grand Prix round Silverstone. Of course, there was talk a little while ago that it might not be Silverstone anymore. There was other couple of tracks that kind of come into the fray when it comes to the UK. We've got a good few historic circuits, but Silverstone's held onto its reputation. Full British podium, says 82 Silly Billy. It's definitely on the cards, to be honest with you. Looking at how free practice went, in fact, I think I can put the free practice numbers up. It was wet. Well, intermediate. We never actually see the drivers use the wet tyres because they don't really exist in Formula 1 at this moment in time, unfortunately. But intermediate tyres, Russell, Hamilton, Norris was our top 3. So that would be your all-British podium. Sainz, Verstappen, Leclerc behind, Piastri in there as well. I think it's going to be very, very close between those top 5, 6, 7 drivers. There's going to be a lot of variables this weekend, the weather being a very clear one of them. Like, it has been all over the place. I imagine it's similar at Silverstone. Obviously, I'm in the UK, but a little bit further to the east in Norwich, and it has literally not stopped raining for about 3 days. I have been soaked through on multiple occasions. I was driving home yesterday night, and I physically couldn't see through the windshield. That is how much rain there was. And there is also supposed to be a storm tomorrow in the UK. So the Grand Prix could be in any kind of condition. We could have like a Spa 2021 scenario on our hands. Hopefully we actually see some racing this time around. We didn't in Spa back then. But yeah, the weather is going to be a key factor in this one. And an all-British podium is definitely on, as long as they can keep it on the track. I feel like that's going to be the hardest thing to do this weekend, to be honest with you. Lando Norris win. A lot of people saying Lando Norris win. Sainz win in the chat. Come on, Norris. I missed one race in Austria, and look what I missed. Yeah, you missed probably the talking point of the season so far. Verstappen, Norris, the collision between the two of them, the repercussions of that. If you do want to know that about that in a little bit more detail, I did have a podcast episode, a post-race podcast episode with Liam Talks Motorsport after the Austrian Grand Prix, which is live on the channel. We discussed kind of everything that happened in Austria, broke it down, talked about that collision, of course. Couldn't really get away from it. Bit closer to Silverstone. It's been raining heavily. That's what I mean. It is going to be a wet weekend in Silverstone. It's going to be very, very interesting indeed. Let's have a little look then at the... Actually, let's talk about this first. I was going to say let's look at the championships, but we do have one piece of kind of quite big news that came out this weekend. Obviously, Ollie Behrman running up to his home Grand Prix in Silverstone. He has now been confirmed on a multi-year deal with Haas. So he'll go into the Haas team for 2025 and will still be at Haas for the regulation change in 2026. I think this is one of those news stories that we kind of knew, and the way that it's been discussed and the way that we've kind of seen it happen. Thank you, Eric, for subscribing. The way that we've kind of seen it happen kind of points towards this was done quite a long time ago. Like, obviously, we heard that Hulkenberg was going to Sauber. I think this deal might have even been done before then, and Haas have just kind of bided their time, waited for a good opportunity to release the news that Ollie Behrman was going to take that seat. I mean, if you look at the fact that Ollie Behrman is in the majority, well, not the majority, is in a lot of free practice one sessions for Haas this year, I think that kind of pointed towards, okay, he's definitely going to get that seat, despite having a pretty poor Formula 2 season at this moment in time. Like, the Prema car is nothing like it was before. Huge regulation change for F2 this season. Like, the brand new style Formula 2 cars have come in. And Prema, who were, winning championships with Oscar Piastri and Charles Leclerc in past, don't look anywhere near where they were. And therefore, Kimi Antonelli, Ollie Behrman have had pretty tough seasons. But Ollie Behrman's shown his quality, right? Came in for that Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, came in for Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, absolutely smashed it, and more than deserving of a place on the Formula One grid. At least, give him a couple of years, give him a shot on the Formula One grid and see what he can do, because I think it's going to be very exciting to see what Ollie Behrman can do. We don't know who his teammate is going to be yet in that Haas car. Will it be Kevin Magnussen? Maybe. I do feel like Haas will probably stick with at least one sort of experienced driver, although they have changed quite a lot behind the scenes. You think of the last time Haas took two rookies, it was Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin, and that was an absolute disaster from start to finish. Maybe they take two rookies again. They roll the dice on that. We've seen them do it once. Maybe they'll do it again. Even though it was a disaster last time, maybe it comes in handy this time. Thank you, Panon, for subscribing to the channel. Let's see what you guys are thinking. Fair play to Ollie. He deserves it, says Tom. Yeah, I agree. I wish 2021 Silverstone doesn't repeat itself. I mean, nobody... Yeah, well, I don't know. It was entertaining. Opened up the discussions around it, wasn't it? Kimi's going to be a Mercedes driver for 2025. That's the thing, right? I think, Kimi Antonelli is the next sort of big rookie available. And it's whether or not they kind of express that idea when it comes to Haas. And I mean, we can kind of move on to the 2025 season so far. This is the driver lineups that have been confirmed. So we have just got one driver per team in terms of Mercedes, Alpine, Williams, RB, Sauber, and Haas that we are still yet to know. So there's still 6 seats available on the Formula One grid. And there's not usually 6 changes a season, let alone the amount of changes that we are seeing already in terms of going into 2025 and then into 2026. But if you look at where Ollie Behrman is, I don't know what Haas really would want. Are they looking for a Valtteri Bottas type? I feel like Haas could swing for a Valtteri Bottas. I think he'd be a great option for them. He brings loads of experience. He's shown that he can work with rookie drivers. I think Zhou Guanyu has kind of come on quite well under the tutelage of Valtteri Bottas. They work really well together as a duo at Sauber. So maybe they're trying to kind of go for a Valtteri Bottas. There's also Esteban Ocon, who has been linked to Haas quite heavily, obviously leaving Alpine, no longer alongside Gasly. And I think when it comes to Ocon, it's obviously, I think he is the best driver that Haas could probably talk into that seat. You know what I mean? I think Ocon now is a higher level than Bottas now, than Magnussen now. And therefore, I do understand the idea of going for Esteban Ocon, but also his character kind of precedes him, right? If Ollie Behrman starts outscoring Esteban Ocon or outperforming Esteban Ocon in the Haas, we don't know whether Ocon's going to kind of turn a little bit sour. You'd assume he'd be the kind of key number one to begin with in that Haas seat. But I don't know. Esteban Ocon, for me, feel like he's a wonderful driver and has been linked to that Haas seat. But whether or not they'll kind of want that personality in there, not sure. I think Zhou Guanyu is also a really good option. I feel like that's more the financial option for Haas, to be honest with you. If you go for Zhou Guanyu, you get the fact that they've got Ollie Behrman, who, has a little bit of kind of British market that he can bring there. Obviously, he is a Ferrari junior driver, so he brings that money as well, but he doesn't have the kind of sponsors of a Zhou Guanyu and the amount of financial backing from China that Zhou Guanyu currently has. So I could see Zhou Guanyu also going into the Haas. So that they're kind of in my thought process right now, because I don't think they'll be able to get Kimi Antonelli. And then you look at the rest of the Formula 2 grid. Is there someone that particularly stands out that Haas would want alongside an Ollie Behrman? I'm not sure. I think they kind of want to focus on Ollie Behrman and make him the person that they're putting into that seat, giving him a lot of time to develop, and then putting in someone slightly more experienced, slightly more helpful in terms of development, I guess, because Ollie Behrman's going to be very fresh in alongside him to kind of go into the 2026 season. But I'd love to know what you think. So if you had to fill in that Haas seat alongside Ollie Behrman, would you go Bottas? Would you go Ocon? Would you go Joe? Would you go Kevin Magnussen, obviously? Just forget the driver that is currently in that Haas seat. Kevin Magnussen, like, which of those four would you personally go for? Yeah, Paul Aaron is there, I guess. But again, I just don't know if Haas would want to go 2 rookies. And then, like, where does Paul Aaron go? Maybe Williams? A push? My predictions, Esteban Ocon to Mercedes. No, maybe. I mean, it depends how Kimi Antonelli does in this kind of driver program this year. I'm not sure. Do I think Carlos Sainz is underrated compared to Leclerc? Not necessarily underrated. I think Charles Leclerc is still the quicker driver overall. But yeah, I do think Carlos Sainz is maybe underestimated here and there. Théo Pourchaire could have gone to Haas. Yeah, that would have been... I feel like if Théo Pourchaire had like 1 season in Formula 1. Maybe if Théo Pourchaire, if he won the Formula 2 title and then actually took a spot in the Sauber team this year, I feel like then Haas might have gone for him. Because I feel like you'd have maybe seen his quality. But I don't know if Haas would want to go. I know Théo Pourchaire is a very experienced rookie in terms of the fact that he has had lots and lots of Formula 1 running and lots of running in test programs and various bits and pieces throughout his time, but not sure. Joe should be kicked out immediately. K-Mag says Logic. Okay. I think it might be Ocon. Yeah, I can see Ocon. I feel like if I had to rank them myself, I would probably say that Haas would want Ocon first. I think Ocon would be their first choice, then Bottas, then Joe, then probably Kevin Magnussen. Like, I feel like Kevin Magnussen is quite low down in the list because you've got to remember Kevin Magnussen had a lot of links to Haas, but it was more like the Gunther Steiner Haas that we had a few years ago. I mean, that's why he was able to then get that seat really short notice when Nikita Mazepin was kind of dropped from the grid. Kevin Magnussen came back in because he was like very well linked to Gunther Steiner still. Gunther Steiner's no longer there. Komatsu is trying to push Haas in a very different direction. I think in a positive direction. As much as I loved Gunther Steiner being on the grid, I do think the new Haas does look a little bit cleaner, a little bit better. They don't catch as much attention as they used to. Ocon to French F4, Ocon to MMA. Ocon does have a pretty tumultuous time in Formula 1, doesn't he? He's very difficult to like, is Esteban Ocon. Especially because he has alienated himself from lots of different fan bases, right? Like, Ocon had arguments with, obviously, his teammate now in Gasly. Ocon has also not got on with Fernando Alonso. He's not got on with Daniel Ricciardo. He's not got on with Nico Hulkenberg. He's not got on with... like, the list seems to go on and on and on. Sergio Perez. Ocon and Perez hated each other when they were at Racing Point. It did get to the point where it was getting... Ocon just loves a battle with his teammate, doesn't he? Absolutely loves a battle with his teammate. Sainz into Audi. Yeah, then there's the other seats we could start to talk about, right? I still think Kimi Antonelli is the first choice for Mercedes as long as his program goes well. I feel like it's become a little bit trickier in that because Kimi Antonelli has actually... because Mercedes have gotten better, That might actually mean Kimi Antonelli is less likely to get that seat because they might want to put a driver in there that can possibly challenge for championships and victories if they do think that this Mercedes car is going to be able to catch up to the Red Bulls and McLarens by next year. Like, do you want to rest on just George Russell on his own and then possibly a Kimi Antonelli who needs a little bit of time to develop? Or do you want George Russell alongside Carlos Sainz is still available, Carlos Sainz, Esteban Ocon, who maybe can help George Russell a little bit more if he were to develop into a championship fight. Lawson to Mercedes, not sure. Not with Daniel. Daniel Ricciardo, I think this might be the end for Daniel Ricciardo. I thought it was the end for Daniel Ricciardo last time he left the grid, to be honest with you, and I'm not sure where he slots into proceedings, unless he stays at RB, obviously. I can't see where he slots into any other team on the grid. But let's look at the Drivers and Constructors Championship. Ooh. Have I upgraded? I have not updated this. This does not look updated. There you go. Driver standings. Max Verstappen still at the top of it, of course. 237 points. Obviously picked up another 10 points last time out in Austria, and the 8 points that came from the sprint race as well. So he had a pretty good weekend considering he almost threw it all away, did Max Verstappen. Lando Norris is still second in the Drivers' Championship. Charles Leclerc couldn't retake that second place. I do think that's going to be an interesting development. Can Lando Norris now escape away from the Ferraris, considering the Ferraris did look like the second fastest team throughout the first 5-6 races of the season. Actually, Miami was kind of the turning point, wasn't it? Where that upgrade came to the McLaren car and they suddenly entered the fray that little bit more. Lando Norris getting that victory, but also looked very, very quick that weekend. Then we've got Carlos Sainz. Sergio Perez is now being hunted down by Oscar Piastri and George Russell. That closed gap very, very quickly last time. Obviously, George Russell picking up 25 points for the victory and Oscar Piastri getting on the podium helped a massive amount. But Sergio Perez is now under real pressure. Lewis Hamilton's still a little bit off in terms of his positioning. I do feel like that gap will close. Like Lewis Hamilton has started to find a little bit of form and now will close the gap on probably Oscar Piastri ahead. Whether George Russell will kind of outperform his teammates still is 50-50. I think George Russell and Lewis Hamilton are very evenly matched this season so far generally. Fernando Alonso, 9th place. Almost guaranteed, to be honest with you, unless there is a crazy race. And actually, this weekend at Silverstone, because of the weather conditions, could be that absolutely bonkers race where you do see a Yuki Tsunoda pick up a 5th place finish or something and really close that gap to Fernando Alonso. But it does feel like that is the gap and that Fernando Alonso is basically guaranteed 9th place. Yuki Tsunoda 10th. Lance Stroll 11th, just 2 points between them. Nico Hulkenberg, after a stunning drive in Austria, is now in 12th place, 14 points, and closing in on Stroll and Tsunoda. It felt like Tsunoda and Hulkenberg, for me, have definitely been the two standout back-of-the-pack drivers so far this season. And it's just whether or not Hulkenberg can actually close that gap to Yuki Tsunoda and get there. Hulkenberg, before Austria, had finished 11th place in 5 of the previous 7 races. If you want a driver who is right on the bubble, right on the edge of proceedings, it is Nico Hulkenberg. He would have a lot more points if points went down to 11th place rather than 10th. He has been so close to points so many times. And I know, obviously, the cutoff is 10th place. You can say, well, he wasn't good enough for points, finishing 11th. But when you finish 11th that many times, it's got to be a little bit frustrating for Nico. Daniel Ricciardo in 11th place. That Miami sprint performance really holding him up right now, but also a point last time in Austria as well really does help out. Ollie Behrman still on 6 points there, kind of in the middle of the pack. Gasly now on 6 points as well after Alpine have been in the points consistently in the last few rounds. They have been very impressive. Kevin Magnussen in 16th place with 5 points. Esteban Ocon with 3. Albon with 2. And it is Joe and Bottas in the Saubers that have yet to score a point this season for that team. And then Logan Sargent yet to score a point in the Williams car for himself. Interested in the battle between Piastri and Perez. Yeah, Piastri and Perez and Russell, to be fair, all in there. Very, very close in terms of the points. Does feel like Carlos Sainz, if the Ferrari isn't quite to the level we're expecting it to be, could also be kind of dragged in by Oscar Piastri, by George Russell, because the Ferrari's been pretty shaky over the last 3 weekends. I know Canada was the absolute antithesis of Ferrari meltdown. They got everything wrong almost all of the time. But since then, also, Spain wasn't great. Austria was a little bit better. The Ferrari hasn't looked amazing in the last 3 rounds. I think because Charles Leclerc made some kind of deal with the devil and he got to win his home Grand Prix, but then also sacrificed all pace from the Ferrari car for the foreseeable future because the deal that he must have made. Piastri 5th or 4th, as in this race. I mean, the Mercedes, the McLaren, the Red Bull, I think they're all going to be right up there. It's going to be very, very close, to be honest with you. Could go either way. What motorsport do I think Ricciardo would move to if he was booted by RB and can't find a seat on the Formula 1 grid next season? That is very good. Ooh, let's. I feel like the obvious is IndyCar, right? It feels like an American motorsport of some kind. I was just trying to think, would he go to NASCAR? Because IndyCar is quite a weird grid to try and get on, especially in the minute. Like, IndyCar is going through quite a few driver changes as well. Like, you think we're having a silly season. The IndyCar grid is also going through quite the silly season as well. So it does feel like maybe Daniel Ricciardo could find himself on the IndyCar grid, although that feels like the obvious answer. I could also see him going for, like, I don't know, NASCAR. It feels American, some kind of American motorsport of some kind. Like, I can't see him going to, like, rally or anything like that. I feel like IndyCar's the obvious one. Then maybe NASCAR. We did see him drive a NASCAR a couple of seasons ago, 3 seasons ago, when we were in Texas. He was with McLaren still at the time. And I think he got to drive a NASCAR then, if my memory serves me correctly. Yeah, it does feel like that one is the opportunity. If McLaren continues, maybe Lando first, but I think Max will win. I mean, we can talk about some of your predictions. I've got some of your predictions that I can load up. Give me 1 moment. Let's have a little look at what you guys predict. If you want to get your official predictions in, head over to the community tab. Over on the community tab, I always put out a predictions community post where you can put your predictions in. You have to get them in early, though, is the thing. You can't get them in after qualifying. Gotta wait. You have to make sure you get them in early. Maze said Oscar, Max, Lewis. The winner, Oscar Piastri, from those 3 on the podium. Best team, Mercedes, though, which is interesting. And both RBs in the top 8. Wow, that would be a hell of a weekend from Maze. We've got Windows 63 official says Max Norris Sainz. Sainz does go well here, actually. Obviously, won here in Silverstone before did Carlos Sainz. Tie between McLaren and Mercedes for best team of the weekend. And Fernando Alonso finishes 5th. Ooh. BNG mapping, Lando, Max, Lewis. There's a lot of Lando, Max podium combinations. And it's a bit 50-50 as to who's on top of the podium places right now. An Oscar Piastri masterclass, though, says Banana. And also Lando, Lewis, Max on the podium for more Zeniarch. I don't know if that's 1 word, 3 words, 5 words. They're in there as well. Dr. RPS says the podium, 1-2 Mercedes. Winner, George Russell. Back-to-back victories for George Russell, with Lando Norris coming 3rd. Mercedes getting the 1st place again. Mercedes being the best team of the weekend. Surprise performance, Lewis Hamilton in 2nd. And the big struggle of the weekend going for Max Verstappen. Ooh, goodness gracious me. See what you guys are saying in the chat. Hello, Cammy, mate. How you doing? Can says winner Lando Norris. Logic says Russell must win. Trev has Max on top of the podium. Lando just behind him. George or Sainz behind as well. Hamilton win, Lando win, Oscar Piastri is what I was about to say. Oscar Piastri pole position, I think. How long until quali starts? About 5 minutes time. Alpine in the points, says Trev. I would like that, to be fair. I'd like Pierre Gasly to get some more points on the board. I think he's starting to really click. Got a video coming up about Alpine, actually. I've been trying to sort of work out what's really going on behind the scenes with Alpine, because there's a lot of weird changes on the horizon. And the fact that they might even get rid of their Renault power supply for the 2026 season. They're in talks with Mercedes. Obviously, how does that work? I feel like that would have played in their favor if they had Esteban Ocon still in the car, because he obviously has a lot of links to Toto Wolff, who is the team principal of Mercedes. But it'll be interesting to see what Alpine actually do, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. So video coming up on that very, very soon. In fact, I released a video yesterday on that incident between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, kind of put together the timeline of those two finally colliding in Austria and how it's slowly been developing over the season, because Red Bull started the season incredibly hot, but then it started to progress towards a little bit of a struggle, especially towards Imola, Monaco time, and then how McLaren resurged through, got their upgrade in Miami and found their pace once again, and how it was just inevitable that those two were going to be touching once again at some point, and it came to a head in Austria. But the actual coming together is a positive for Formula One overall. So if you haven't seen that video, it is the top link in the description. I mean, just maybe open it up in another window, you know, do me a favor, open it up, let it just play through the whole way. The ads, let them play through as well. And then we can come back and watch qualifying together, which starts in a couple of minutes time. T-Pose Man, another win, please. Hello, Regav. Who am I rooting for? Unfortunately, I'm a McLaren fan through and through. It's got to be Lando or Oscar for me on the top step of the podium for me to lose my mind. If you haven't seen the Miami VOD, goodness gracious me, I lost my head. Let's get into it then. Let's see if we have got any drivers in cars at the moment then. And getting out onto... have a little look. Oh, wrong one. Here we go then. Getting set up for qualifying. A couple of bits and pieces I'll load up in the background. No drivers out on track as of yet. Well, they can't be out on track as of yet, but in the pit lane as of yet either. So still waiting for those. Sarah Nault, how will the 50 place penalty work? I mean, it works in the way that you'd expect. Wherever you qualify, you then get dropped back 50 places. But because you get dropped back 50 places, there's only 20 cars. You just start from 20th place. That's basically how it works. You don't have to start from the pit lane unless you make changes under Parc Fermé conditions. So if it's 20 place or 50 place penalty, you just drop back to the back of the grid. Just want to see Alonso win at least once before 2026. I feel like last year was the chance, wasn't it? It was the Monaco race. It was just like could have done it. Didn't quite make it happen. But Fernando Alonso, Aston Martin look further off that happening this year than they did last year. That's for sure. Oops. Didn't mean to click that. Opened up my own stream. Doo-doo. Weather in terms of this session is still looking pretty grey. Gonna say that. It hasn't rained particularly hard since free practice 3, so it's definitely slowed down at least a touch in terms of the rain, but Unfortunately, in the UK, that's never a guarantee. It could come at any point. Like, I'm not that close to Silverstone, but where I am living in the UK right now, it has rained almost constantly on and off for about 5-6 days. Like, the rain yesterday, and there was a storm yesterday as well, like a thunderstorm. It was all a bit crazy, but now it's slowed down, at least for the moment, at Silverstone. We might even see some dry tyres to begin the session. Yeah, maybe. There's a kind of middling dry line emerging, at least, on the track. So we might see some dry tyres at some point. Depends on what the drivers are feeling in terms of grip. In fact, here we are then, the first drivers to drive towards the bottom end of the start-finish straight, exiting the pits. Let's head in. There you go. Is intermediate tyres for Logan Sargent, Bottas, and Joe also coming out on the intermediate tyres. There's kind of a remnants of a dry line that you feel like if it doesn't rain anymore, especially with 20 cars rattling around on the intermediate tyres, kind of dispersing the water, which is on the racing line, then maybe we'll see some dry tyres. It's just through a few of the corners. You can see a little bit of spray coming off the back of the cars. And therefore, not quite dry tyre ready. Lando must win at Silverstone. I'd love him to be honest with you. Alvaro Ray in the chat. Bonjour. Bonjour, mate. How you doing? Normal British holiday weather? Yeah. If you've ever come to the UK, you've probably been rained upon. I think that's just a general thing that has to go through. Oh, thank you, Ricard, for becoming an NA supporter. Thank you so much, mate. Appreciate that. The membership, that is also an option. You can join, become a member of the channel down below. It supports us and everybody who puts together all of this for us. Obviously, thanks to Multi-Viewer as well. Have to mention that before we get into the depths of qualifying. And the McLaren cars have come out of the garage. There's the one driver that everyone's got their eye on, Lando Norris. A home Grand Prix victory seems to be within touching distance, doesn't it? And maybe, just maybe, it'll be this weekend for Lando Norris. His second victory in Formula One, of course, picked up that first one in Miami. But let's get into it then. Logan Sargent has started a flying lap. He was the first driver out on track. So if we are going into this, let's keep an eye on Logan Sargent's time, making his way through past Lando Norris. I'm a McLaren fan as well. Lovely, mate. Rooting for Oscar this weekend. The other side of the coin. Okay. Think we can catch up to Ferrari. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Constructors Championship. We are going to be right up there. Ferrari are within touching distance. Lando Norris obviously overtaken both of the Ferraris in the driver's standings as well. Definitely can get there as well. Lewis Hamilton also starting his flying lap. And just going to see how they do for these first few sections. George Russell then goes actually a little bit quicker than his teammate. 3/10 quicker than his teammate through the first sector is George Russell. Russell behind Lewis Hamilton out on track, following one another. A nice little bit of a gap for Lewis Hamilton, actually. You can see him just coming around turn 9 through to turn 10. Esteban Ocon, the next car up the road, is actually making his way all the way down to turn 15, sorry. So Lewis Hamilton, lovely little gap to run into. See how they compare. Valtteri Bottas goes quicker than Logan Sargent by half a second. Hamilton, though, going quickest so far. He is quicker than his teammate. So Hamilton and George Russell at the moment swapping fast sectors until Max Verstappen actually sets a very fast middle sector, even though he is on an outlap, I think. Hamilton then round the final couple of bends and a 137.7 and a 137.8 for George Russell. Less than a half a tenth between the two Mercedes cars. Here is Max Verstappen. Oh, Max Verstappen wasn't a fast lap. I thought he was on an out lap. No, he is there. Max Verstappen goes quickest. 137.5. Couple attempts on the two Mercedes cars behind. Ocon, it's a second and a half off that pace, though. Ooh, that is a big slide. And we're going to see that from a few drivers here as the intermediate tyres start to find temperature and whether or not the intermediate tyres are going to be swapped for some softs. We're yet to see. It's just a few corners that they go through. There's a few splashes of spray as they make their way around the Silverstone Circuit. Lando Norris not quickest through either the first or second sector so far. Alex Albon also on a flying lap behind, keeping an eye on him. Alex Albon, kind of like a pseudo home Grand Prix. Obviously, he races under the Thai flag, but grew up in Britain. It's a bit of a... He's a mixed citizen, is Alex Albon. But here comes Lando Norris. Oh, and just under a tenth slower than a Max Verstappen. It was that fast final sector that put Lando Norris within touching distance of the Red Bull. And then Hamilton and Russell stay behind. Charles Leclerc has also completed a lap. Alex Albon drops into 6th place. Piastri 7th. Perez 8th. Tsunoda 9th. Esteban Ocon 10th so far. Still waiting for the Hasses to complete their lap times before we know who are going to be in the bottom 5 after the first few flying laps. In fact, Carlos Sainz is currently the slowest driver out on track. 3.5 seconds off the pace, but is now going a lot quicker. Carlos Sainz needs to go, well, quicker than Gasly on a 139.8, but you'd expect the Ferrari to at least trouble the top 5. If not get into it. Alex Albon actually on the periphery of Charles Leclerc, closer to Alex Albon's time than I expected. And Carlos Sainz actually only goes 9th fastest, still around about second off the pace of Max Verstappen at the top of the timing sheets. That does pop Pierre Gasly into the bottom 5. Gasly, Sargent, and Ricciardo, the 3 right now, joined by the 2 Hasses of Magnussen and Hülkenberg, but the Hasses yet to have set a lap time of note. In fact, Kevin Magnussen is on an outlap. Nico Hülkenberg still in the pits. As we see Valtteri Bottas making his way back into the pit lane as the 2 McLarens actually make their way around the final couple of corners, just rolling up. Oh, and here you go. That is why Valtteri Bottas has made his way into the pit lane, because the Stake Sauber team are rolling the dice on some slick tyres, and actually they're not ready with the slick tyres. We've got the front right isn't actually ready to go on and eventually gets onto the car. It seemed like a bit of a last-minute decision, possibly from Valtteri Bottas inside the car, to go onto the soft compound tyre there, because the carriage was not ready with those dry tyres. Did eventually get onto Valtteri Bottas's car, and he'll be released back onto the circuit. Where's he going to come out? He's going to... Well, he's still stationary, actually. Nope, he is actually finally going to get underway. I think he's going to come out around about Fernando Alonso in terms of the drivers out on tracks. Keep an eye for Valtteri Bottas in there, coming around turn 1 through to turn 2 right now. See what Bottas can do. He's still safe, Valtteri Bottas, technically. It's in 15th place. Magnussen and Hülkenberg, though, as I said, yet to set a time. Oscar Piastri just a 10.5 down on Lewis Hamilton's quickest time so far. Hamilton has jumped to the top of the timing sheets, found 2.5 tenths on Max Verstappen, who was there. George Russell has also overtaken the Red Bull to slot into 2nd place, a 10th off his teammate. Lando Norris in 4th, Charles Leclerc 5th, Alex Albon 6th. And I say that as Oscar Piastri jumps up to third place on the timing sheets and also displaces Verstappen. Sergio Perez has come into the pits. Oh, there's some slick tyres in front of a Ferrari. Which of the Ferraris is coming into the pits? It's Carlos Sainz, who has asked for some dry tyres. Carlos Sainz currently 12th fastest out on track at the moment. Here's a Lando Norris replay. Oh, goes very deep. Does Lando Norris? Feels like, yeah, maybe those intermediate tyres have just lost the grip advantage that they have and overheated a touch because he actually runs wide, goes through the puddles. Valtteri Bottas now making his way around. He'll be the first driver to set a fast lap on the softs. We're seeing lots and lots of drivers running the softs now. Leclerc's popped them on. Albon's got them on as well. Perez, Sainz, Tsunoda, Ocon on some soft compound tyres. Ricciardo and Logan Sargent as well. Oh, yellow flag in sector 2. Sergio Perez seems to have gone off. And it's Sergio Perez in the gravel. And it's a red flag. And that's going to be it. For Sergio Perez, he's going to be out. Surely he only set a lap time on the intermediates. And Sergio Perez is stuck in the gravel. I think his car might have even bottomed out a touch. Christian Horner looks on, shakes his head, knows that the driver they gave a contract to just a couple of races ago has been absolutely dreadful since Monaco, hasn't he? Sergio Perez going for a real slump in form. Sergio Perez beached in the gravel, calls an early end to Q1. Well, not an end, an early stop to Q1. Red flag is waved. 7.5 minutes on the clock. So the drivers will make their way back around. They'll come into the pits. We're going to see a little bit of a 7.5 minute sprint qualifying here because we're going to see the cars all go onto the slick tyres, you'd imagine. And when they do manage to go onto the slick tyres, they'll then get 1 or 2 runs, maybe 2 runs in 7.5 minutes. It's going to be tight though. Only if you come out first will you get a second run, I reckon. Red Bull, please sack Perez and sign either Sainz or Tsunoda. It does feel like Sergio Perez is going through another mid-season slump. You know, it was last season, we kind of let him off a touch just because the Red Bull of Max Verstappen was so dominant that they'd won both championships with Max Verstappen alone, you know what I mean? Whereas this season, it does feel like Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, they're all starting to outperform Sergio Perez pretty much every single weekend in terms of results. And Sergio Perez has now found himself at a point where he's just really, really struggling. And it just makes you wonder. Sergio Perez, the crane coming over to pick the Red Bull car up. And Sergio Perez asking if he can be pushed back onto the track. I don't think that's allowed though, Sergio, I'm afraid. And that is going to be you out of this qualifying session. Currently has the 10th fastest time on the board, but I can't imagine that staying there with the cars popping on soft compound tyres. You know, you look at the cars behind him, Alonso, Sainz, Tsunoda, Zhou, Ocon, all of those cars I can see improving on their lap time substantially, and they're not too far adrift from Sergio Perez's lap time. We are seeing all the other cars, though, return to the garage. There's his teammate Max Verstappen making his way into the pit garage. Oh, here we go. Here's the replay of what happened to Sergio Perez. Oh, a real snap of oversteer. And I think the problem is, as soon as he goes onto the runoff area, obviously there is a lot of water still out there because, but he tries to get back on the throttle a touch. And that's the thing, right? You're going off the racing line. The racing line has dried out. The racing line is where you want those slick tires now because the intermediate tires are starting to overheat where the track has dried, that strip of track that has dried out completely. But as soon as you go off that strip, as soon as there's a little bit of oversteer that Sergio Perez has there, snap of it, he then gets off of the racing line onto the wet stuff. And you can see as soon as he tries to put the throttle down once again, spins up the tires, spins around the Red Bull, into the gravel he goes, and that is him beached, unfortunately, especially because the gravel will be wet as well, so it just displace itself and clump itself up underneath the car. And unfortunately, Sergio Perez dropping out of qualifying. And as I said, I feel like he's under a lot of threat in there. 10th place right now, 10th fastest time so far. Feels like he's not going to end up getting through this qualifying session into Q2. I mean, he wouldn't be able to take part in Q2 anyway, but at least he'd start from 15th place. Feel like this might be Sergio Perez starting from the back of the pack tomorrow. Oh, and that was what it was as well. And once he gets into the gravel, it's that what I said, like the gravel, because it's probably a little bit damp as well. Oh, and Daniel Ricciardo also runs wide at the same corner, nearly follows Sergio Perez into the same piece of gravel, but I think just ducks out of it. Yeah, when Checo actually gets into the gravel, he then spins up the rear tires, I think just trying to escape the gravel as quickly as possible, but just digs himself in, actually, and ends up getting into a position where, because he digs in his tires, he's kind of done and dusted. Nico Hülkenberg, also yet to set a time in qualifying so far, is joining the queue at the end of the pit lane. The drivers starting to prepare themselves for a run. Oh, and the McLaren team letting Oscar Piastri know there is a likelihood of rain coming towards the circuit. It does feel like we're going to get some soft tire running, at least at the end of this session, for the 7 minutes that remain. But possibly the intermediate tires will be back out again. And this is where the teams actually need to be a little bit careful that they don't, use too many. They only have so many intermediate tires for the weekend, only so many wet tires for the weekend as well. There is still a push on using less tires per weekend in Formula One that the teams have to balance out even when it is wet. Someone has finally woken Hülkenberg up. I think they were, I don't know, I think they were maybe gambling on waiting for the track to dry up a little bit. I mean, they got it right. Track has dried up just enough. Ooh. Oh, hello. Lando Norris on the radio being told that the rain is going to come a little bit early. It's just going to be spots, though, for now. So just a little bit of rain, I think, will probably be fine in terms of getting some soft compound tire runs out on track. I mean, everybody is in the pit lane on the soft compound tires as it is. You can see Fernando Alonso trying to join the queue behind the Hasses. Did Hülkenberg crash out? No. Hülkenberg just saving a set of intermediate tires by the looks of things, deciding not to go out in that first run, was about to go out, and then the red flag caused by Sergio Perez, and he came back in once again. So Nico Hülkenberg waiting for that. I was just looking at Daniel Ricciardo, who is currently in 19th place ahead of him. Sargent 18th, Gasly and Bottas. So if we don't get done, then it will be those 5. It does feel like Sergio Perez is going to be joining those 5 at the back of that pack. Although we could see another spin here. Getting very careful around here. Otherwise, you're going to end up in the gravel like Sergio Perez did. Verstappen not in the queue yet. Not that I've seen, but to be fair, we've been focusing on the front end of the queue where we've got Bottas and Joe just leaving the pits. Magnussen, Hulkenberg leaving as well. Lance Stroll behind in the Aston Martins. Oh. Investigation after the session. Lance Stroll possibly leaving the pit lane whilst the red light was showing. And Lando Norris being told that the rain will come from turn 7. Turn 7. So it's looking like it's going to come from that direction across the track. But hopefully we should get some soft compound tyre running before the rain really starts to come once again. Could I see a Mercedes P1, P2? Most certainly. They're really quick in all of the free practice sessions so far. Obviously, Lando Norris was quickest in free practice 1 and free practice 2 on Friday. George Russell, though, was quickest this morning in free practice 3. And Lewis Hamilton and George Russell at the top of the timing sheets right now. So it's looking like Mercedes are kind of going to be right in the mix. Piastri third fastest right now for the McLaren team, though. Lando Norris looking to improve. He's in 5th, Verstappen 4th. But to be honest with you, we're just looking at the bottom end of the grid here. We've got Bottas, Gasly, Sargent, Ricciardo, and Hulkenberg, our bottom 5 right now. And all of those 5 need to improve. They're going to make their way into Q2. 5.5 minutes left to go then. And Valtteri Bottas is going to be the first driver to set a fast lap on soft compound tyres. Well, as long as he can get all the way around without putting it in the gravel. Sergio Perez didn't manage to do that. Sergio Perez in the pits as of now. 10th fastest time was set, though, on intermediate tyres. Does feel like that's going to disappear fairly swiftly. Valtteri Bottas is 2.5 seconds up on Esteban Ocon's time already in 15th place. And Ocon was only 5/10 off Perez in 10th place. So Sergio Perez, unfortunately, that drop into the gravel is also likely to drop him all the way to the back of the grid after these runners get around. Zhou Guanyu just behind his teammate, also running the soft compound tyre for the Stake Sauber team. We're seeing all the drivers coming out now, knowing that they need to get out on track and improve their time. Valtteri Bottas going 3.5 seconds quicker than Lewis Hamilton's current fastest lap time. That is the difference between the intermediate and the soft compound tyres, especially when the track has dried up just enough to get that grip from the soft compound tyres and get the rubber really sticking to the road. No water to displace. Nico Hulkenberg has just gone fastest in the middle sector of anyone so far. And there is Valtteri Bottas setting the fastest lap, 4.7 seconds quicker than Hamilton's intermediate time. Here comes Zhou Guanyu, a 1:32.9. This is what I meant by it being kind of a mini sprint session that we're going to see now. Soft compound tyres on for the entire grid. All of the intermediate times are effectively irrelevant. And Nico Hulkenberg comes across the line at 1:31.9. Magnussen goes between the two Stake Sauber cars. So we're going to start to see these cars getting quicker and quicker times as it dries and gets better and better. Fernando Alonso slots into 2nd place. Oscar Piastri goes quickest of anybody so far, a whole second ahead of Nico Hulkenberg. A 1:30.8 from Piastri. Norris slots in, actually 7/10 slower than his teammate, but still 2nd fastest so far. Oh, and there's a Red Bull. It's Max Verstappen in the gravel. Oh my goodness me, Max Verstappen in the gravel. We could see both of the Red Bulls possibly drop out here. Sergio Perez has already dropped into 15th place. Is utterly guaranteed to drop out of it. Carlos Sainz on the radio. We need this lap, the Spaniard is told by his Italian team. I think Carlos Sainz knows that. There is a Stake Sauber in the way of the Ferrari, though. And Carlos Sainz currently 16th fastest overall. I'm just keeping an eye on Max Verstappen. He is going to get another run at it. He's running around in 16th, just coming through turn 16 and 17, getting out of the way of Daniel Ricciardo. But keep an eye on Max Verstappen. He went through the gravel. And he needs to go quicker than he is now. He's currently 12th fastest. Sergio Perez then does drop out into the bottom 5. So we'll start from the back of the pack as saying. Carlos Sainz goes 9th fastest. Still 5 seconds off the pace though, Carlos Sainz. Daniel Ricciardo 5 seconds off as well. The rain possibly getting that little bit heavier. Charles Leclerc only goes 10th fastest. And it feels like those cars that got out a little bit earlier maybe nailed it, because the gap between Zhou Guanyu in 8th place and Carlos Sainz in 9th place is staggering. Daniel Ricciardo 11th, Ocon 12th, Russell 13th. Also under pressure. Oh, and he goes through. In fact, it's exactly where Sergio Perez went off. Exactly where Sergio Perez went off. But Max Verstappen, instead of spinning, just bounced the car through the gravel. The amount of damage that's going to do to the underside of that Red Bull car does make you worried for Max Verstappen, especially because the rain is coming. And he is 15th fastest right now as Max Verstappen. Albon, Tsunoda, Gasly, and Sargent currently joining Sergio Perez out of qualifying so far. Verstappen is the driver at risk. George Russell's going to improve, a 32.6 from him. Daniel Ricciardo, currently 13th fastest, is going to be the next driver across the start-finish line. Max Verstappen actually following just behind the RB. Carlos Sainz's lap time was deleted. And there goes Verstappen. It is 3rd fastest, saves his qualifying. And so does Carlos Sainz, gets himself out of trouble, but actually puts his teammate Charles Leclerc in a little bit of bother in 14th. Charles Leclerc just coming around the final couple of corners for Ferrari. Needs to get himself out of that position in 14th. Does improve up to 9th place. It is still Albon, Tsunoda, Gasly, and Sargent that are around that bottom 5. Lance Stroll, a stunning lap, goes 2nd fastest overall. Here comes Alex Albon then. Can he improve? Yes! Alex Albon goes 2nd fastest in the Williams. That puts Daniel Ricciardo in the bottom 5. Tsunoda then jumps in front of Esteban Ocon to go 15th and on the bubble, but then gets dropped out by Logan Sargent in the Williams. Goes up into 6th place. Fernando Alonso is next across the start-finish line. Currently in 10th place. Can he improve? Yes, goes 3rd fastest and takes the checkered flag. Does Fernando Alonso. Lewis Hamilton goes quickest overall, a 129.5. Lando Norris is pitted and not out on track. George Russell comes home in 2nd place behind his teammate. 6 tenths off of his teammate, though. A stunning lap from Lewis Hamilton. Really was in the conditions that we currently have. Verstappen looking to improve is still 10th fastest overall. Ricciardo 18th fastest on a flying lap, comes around the final corner. 6th fastest for Ricciardo. Verstappen 8th fastest as Carlos Sainz goes 3rd. Charles Leclerc once again under pressure in 14th. Kevin Magnussen also under a little bit of pressure in 15th. Got Zhou Guanyu, Yuki Tsunoda, and Esteban Ocon. Currently the 3 drivers joining Perez and Gasly, who are guaranteed to be out. Tsunoda, though, is on a fast lap and actually going very quick through the first sector, Tsunoda. Zhou Guanyu does improve and goes 7th fastest. That puts his teammate Valtteri Bottas in the position where he might get knocked out by this man here, Yuki Tsunoda, coming around the final couple of corners. It was a purple first sector from the Japanese driver. Can he improve? Yes. Goes 6th fastest, and that drops Valtteri Bottas into the bottom 5. Let's see then, Esteban Ocon currently making his way down towards turn 13. Is he on a flying lap? I don't think he is. No, heads into the pit lane does Esteban Ocon, and that's Ocon out of qualifying as well. So it was Valtteri Bottas, the man who started the soft compound tyre trend. He went out. He's in 16th place. Kevin Magnussen will start in 17th. Ocon in 18th. Sergio Perez in 19th. And Pierre Gasly was pretty much guaranteed, well, was guaranteed to start in 20th place anyway, considering the penalties, but starts in 20th place tomorrow. So there are our bottom 5. And goodness gracious me, there was a lot of mixed conditions and a lot of mixed lap times from the drivers out there in that Q1 session. Stopped due to a red flag. And Ocon, the only lap where I was able to push was the lap where it was wet. Again, just got a little bit unlucky with everything not quite falling in his favor, did Esteban Ocon. And Nico Hülkenberg just squeaked through in 15th place for Haas. Sargent, Norris, Stroll, Verstappen, Ricciardo, Alonso, Joe, Albon, Tsunoda, Piastri, Sainz, Leclerc, Russell, and Hamilton will be the 15 drivers that will be on track for Q2. The rain has started to just come down that little bit more. It's a real gamble right now for the cars. Just impossible to know whether you're going to get a clean lap, not only in terms of track position with the 20 cars rattling around Silverstone, but also a clean lap just in terms of not getting caught out by a little bit of rain in the wrong part of the track at the wrong time for you. That's what cost Esteban Ocon. Sergio Perez also got caught out. Little bit of oversteer, went off the track, ended up finding that wet part of the track and then spun out into the gravel because of it. We saw his teammate Max Verstappen do the exact same, but where Sergio Perez was beached, Max Verstappen continued on through the gravel and managed to just about get himself into a position where he was comfortably through in, well, 11th place. Not the most comfortable where you'd expect a Red Bull to be, but Sergio Perez out of it. Let's have a little look then. What are you guys saying? Nice one, Checo. Real nice. Sargent Q3. Well, he's through to Q2. 14 fastest so far. Let's not count our chickens as of yet. Although Alex Albon shown that the Williams car did have the pace there. Up in 7th place. I feel like we're going to see a very mixed grid, to be honest with you. Gasly starts P70 now. Technically, yes. Although it's kind of a bit of a weird one. Obviously, in the standings, like in the official standings thing, he'll have, P70. But obviously, we'll start 20th. Not going to make him start from sort of turn 13. Albon Q3, definitely on the cards. Logan Sargent pole. We're getting ahead of ourselves now. We're really getting ahead of ourselves in the chat. But a real mixed Q1 there. We had the intermediate tyre run to begin with. The track was drying out just enough for the soft compound tyres. Then we had that spin from Sergio Perez, which completely changed the entire complexion of the final part of qualifying. We were tentative as to whether the soft compound tyre was going to be the right choice, but that extra 5 minutes that the red flag then caused just dried up the track enough for the soft compound tyre to be the absolute guaranteed best choice of tyre. And then it was just whether or not you were in the right place at the right time. You know, did you get that opportunity to put a lap in with no rain, with no traffic, and get yourself through? We are going to head into Q2 though. Verstappen, Stroll, Norris, Sargent, and Hülkenberg, the 5 drivers that need to improve. And the 2 drivers that came together in Austria, Verstappen and Lando Norris, you wouldn't have expected to see those 2 in that 5. Of course, more than enough time for them to improve. 15 minutes on the clock for this Q2 session. And a little bit of rain possibly on the way. But Zach Brown saying it should clear up enough for us to see some soft compound tyre running and some full qualifying pace from these Formula 1 cars. Just to reiterate, Valtteri Bottas, Kevin Magnussen, Esteban Ocon, Sergio Perez, and Pierre Gasly out of qualifying. 15 drivers remain. Hamilton was quickest in Q1. Russell, Leclerc, Sainz, Piastri, Tsunoda, Albon, Joe, Alonso, and Ricciardo were the top 10 drivers that would have made their way into Q3 had it been the end of Q2. But Verstappen, Stroll, Norris, Sargent, and Hülkenberg, the opportunity to improve and the opportunity to get into the battle for pole position here in Silverstone. Q2 about to get underway. Drivers starting to make their way out onto the pit lane. Oh, Lance Stroll. A little look. Oh, yeah, this was the incident when Lance Stroll... Oh! He set off. The red light did come on as the Aston Martin was making its way to the end of the pit lane, but he was almost at the line when the red light came on. So not too sure if there was much that the Aston Martin driver could do there. It'd be a very harsh penalty, in my opinion, for Lance Stroll if he does get one. But the red light did come on. You'd have had to stamp on the brakes, though, with Lance Stroll because of that red flag incident. However, let's get into Q2 then. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you are joining us live, you could hit that like button. That would be absolutely amazing. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button as well. We're trying to aim for 90,000 subscribers. We're closing in on it every single day. You can hit the like button as well. That's massively supportive for the streams. And if you want to open up a video in another tab, maybe have it rolling in the background. I released a video on my take of how Lando Norris and Max Verstappen built up to that moment in Austria throughout this season and why the collision was almost inevitable between the two of them come that Austrian Grand Prix weekend. That's the first link in the description and down below. So hit that link, watch that video. That would also massively help out the channel more than you can imagine. Let's get into it though. Alex Albon is going to be the first driver to set a fast lap time. Logan Sargent comes out behind him in the Williams as well. Zhou Guanyu obviously knocked out his teammate Valtteri Bottas, put Bottas in 15th place and then slot into 16th to Valtteri Bottas. So Zhou Guanyu, the sole driver for Stake Sauber, still in this. Thank you for subscribing. Obama's last name and art gallery. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Massively appreciated. 250 likes if Hamilton gets pole. I mean, let's aim for 250 likes anyway. There is 700 people currently in the stream. I feel like 250 likes is very much doable if we all put our minds to it. Let's work as a team during this time. And Alex Albon's going to get us underway. The livery for the Williams team with the Great British flag running over the engine cover actually has all of the Williams team engraved in there. So you can sort of see up close every single person who works for Williams Formula One hidden somewhere amongst the Union Jack flag that they have on the car. Alex Albon, though, let's set the standard in the Williams. The rest of the grid making their way out onto the track. In fact, every driver out on track right now. Alex Albon pole. He's going to be on provisional pole, at least for a little while, as he comes through the first sector and finishes the second sector momentarily as well. Yuki Tsunoda, though, is very... Oh, no, sorry. It's Fernando Alonso has just gone quickest in the first sector of the lap times that have been set so far. As I said, Albon is going to set the standard in that. So I think Daniel will replace Perez if Perez doesn't improve. I mean, Daniel Ricciardo hasn't been the better of the RB drivers, in my opinion. If I was going to pick an RB driver right now, it'd be Yuki Tsunoda would go into that seat alongside Max Verstappen. Obviously, I am not the person who makes those decisions for the Red Bull team. I'm sure Christian Horner, Helmut Marko, and the Red Bull higher-ups are all scratching their heads as to what they can do. Try and get Sergio Perez back on track, or even though they've only recently offered him the contract to stay, do they snatch it away from him? It's very Red Bull to take away a contract from a driver. We saw it from Nick de Vries last season. He only got to the summer break before he was replaced by Daniel Ricciardo. Well, not even the summer break. A couple of races before the summer break, Daniel Ricciardo took that seat from Nick de Vries. Just because you got a contract at Red Bull does not mean you are guaranteed to be driving in their cars. Fernando Alonso sets a 127.6. Another driver who was in the talk with the Red Bull about that seat next to Max Verstappen, but never came to fruition. Max Verstappen actually going a little bit slower than Fernando Alonso through the first and second sectors. Piastri has just come across the line and gone quickest of anybody so far. Charles Leclerc can only go 6th fastest overall. We're watching on board with Max Verstappen. It's not the cleanest lap I've ever seen from the Dutchman. Goes 4th fastest on the timesheets. And nearly 2 tenths off the pace, especially Carlos Sainz comes across the line. Now puts Max Verstappen 2.5 tenths of the pace. Piastri within a tenth of Carlos Sainz, though. Lewis Hamilton comes across the line. It's not great from Hamilton either. Only 8th fastest so far. 10 minutes to go in this session, though. Still a long way to run. George Russell also is going to come across the line for Mercedes and stays at the back of the pack as Lando Norris jumps up to the top of the timing sheets, a 127.4 from Lando Norris, 0.2 quicker than his teammate and a 10th quicker than Carlos Sainz as well. Daniel Ricciardo comes across the line and it's 13th fastest for the RB of Daniel Ricciardo. Lewis Hamilton is on a flying lap, supposedly, but was quite slow through the first sector, was Lewis Hamilton. And maybe we'll back off of this lap, depending on how he's feeling about it. His 9th fastest overall is Lewis Hamilton. Wasn't as bad as his teammate, George Russell, currently 15th. And Charles Leclerc in 11th place. So it's Leclerc, Joe, Ricciardo, Sargent, and Russell. The bottom 5 right now. Again, I don't know if you'd have put those in your bottom 5 if you were gambling before the weekend. 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th place, of course, will drop out at the end of this session. The top 10 will get the opportunity to battle it out for pole position in Silverstone for tomorrow's Grand Prix. We will be live for tomorrow's Grand Prix as always as well. So if you are enjoying this, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you don't miss any of the live sessions that we have. And hit that like button as well, of course. Checo spun and crashed. He did indeed. Went off the racing line. Got onto the wet stuff. Lost control of his Red Bull. Beached himself in the gravel. Alex Albon goes 4th fastest overall for Williams. They look to have a lot more pace this Silverstone weekend than they have in recent couple of weekends. They were pretty slow in Spain, a little bit better in Austria, but not great still. And both of the Williamses actually running in the top 10 right now. Fernando Alonso, slow in the first sector, quickest of anybody in the second sector. So Fernando Alonso showing the duality of that Aston Martin car. His teammate comes across the line, goes 5th. But Alonso goes quickest. Even with a poor first sector time, Fernando Alonso made up for it in the second and third sectors. Charles Leclerc now actually looking to improve. Currently 14th on the grid is Charles Leclerc. 6.5 tenths off Logan Sargent's time in 10th place. And he'll be looking to displace the American from that position. Going quicker in the first and second sectors, Charles Leclerc. And comes across the line and goes 8th. Fastest. It's not a ridiculous lap time from Charles Leclerc. Definitely wouldn't call him definitely safe with 7 minutes left to go in the session. Especially with Russell, Tsunoda, Ricciardo all in that bottom 5 still and looking to improve. There's Max Verstappen, comes across the line, 2nd fastest. And then Carlos Sainz goes even quicker still. We could have an all-Spanish front row. Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso 1-2 at this moment in time. But Oscar Piastri is starting a flying lap now for the McLaren team. Verstappen P10. No. Made his way up to P3 currently. Nico Hülkenberg, actually, the driver, under pressure right now on 10th spot. Charles Leclerc, though, as I said, not incredibly safe in 9th place. Oscar Piastri on a flying lap is in 8th place right now. Hamilton, Albon, and Stroll all in the pits. So is Fernando Alonso. We've actually got Sargent, Russell, Tsunoda, Joe, and Ricciardo. They're bottom 5 drivers all in the pit lane as well. So waiting for them to return to the track and see whether they'll be able to get themselves out of that bottom 5. 5 minutes and 50 seconds on the clock for those 5 drivers at the back to improve. In fact, here comes Logan Sargent out on track. He's just coming through turn 3. So we'll see if Sargent can put himself in contention for the top 10. Alex Albon is there, his Williams teammate. Oscar Piastri's just gone quickest of anybody through the middle sector. The 34.9 through the middle sector, which is very quick indeed. Piastri now looking to improve in the 3rd sector as well. Comes across the start-finish line and actually takes pole position from Carlos Sainz, 2/10 quicker than Carlos Sainz, and good enough for P1 at this moment in time. Albon looking like he could get into Q3. Yes, indeed. Logan Sargent just making his way around turn 9. Not currently on a flying lap is Logan Sargent, but will be the first of those drivers in the bottom 5 to get his next flying lap in. George Russell on an outlap. Zhou Guanyu on an outlap as well. They're actually coming around behind Logan Sargent. 10, 11, 12 at this moment in time. Vera, hello. How's it going? Amount of people who want Verstappen to crash makes me want Verstappen to get pole. It's just the British bias definitely coming out, isn't it? Max Verstappen had a little bit of a battle with Lewis Hamilton in 2021, I think it's fair to say, and then also had a little bit of a battle with Lando Norris last time out. And when you're colliding with 2 of the 3 British drivers out on track fairly often over the last few seasons, you are putting yourself in like contentious waters coming into the Silverstone Grand Prix. And actually, Max Verstappen and George Russell don't really get on either, do they? There was a time in Baku where Max Verstappen had a go at George Russell. Can't remember what he called him now. It was unsavory, let's say, from Max Verstappen, the Dutchman. Not very happy with George Russell that day. So Max Verstappen, yeah, he's had a run-in with all 3 of the British drivers on the grid. Doesn't have the best reputation in the UK. Nico Hülkenberg has gone quickest in the first sector of anybody. He's the man on the bubble in 10th place. Is it about to burst, or can he improve? George Russell has improved by 3.5 tenths through the first sector, and Hülkenberg takes pole position. Wow. I mean, it's not Q3 yet, but that is a good omen for the Haas team if Nico Hülkenberg can continue on that kind of pace, especially with Kevin Magnussen dropping out in Q1, 17th fastest overall, and the top spot does feel like it's going to change hands fairly swiftly. Hülkenberg, Piastri, and Sainz all quickest through the first, second, and third sectors each, so nobody is getting a whole lap together. George Russell currently coming around to try and improve, 12th fastest right now. Logan Sargent, though, does come across the line and improves, goes 4th fastest in his Williams, puts Lance Stroll, who is in the pit lane. Is Lance Stroll making his way out? He is, yeah. He's just behind Fernando Alonso in the pit exit. There's George Russell, comes across the line, goes fastest. The track is getting quicker and quicker. Zhou Guanyu, though, not so much. Goes 13th fastest overall in the Stakes Sauber car. George Russell, though, quickest in the third sector overall. Lewis Hamilton tries to come along. Oh, it's 4 thousandths of a second. But then comes Lando Norris and displaces both of them anyway by 2 tenths of a second. Goes quickest with 2 minutes left to go in the session. Lando Norris quickest of anybody through that middle sector. Wow. Max Verstappen is in 9th place right now. Try and get into Q3. High track evolution. Charles Leclerc is so there's a visor tear off as well. Caught in the rear wing of Charles Leclerc's Ferrari. Hopefully isn't going to cost him too much time. He's currently on an outlap, is Charles Leclerc. He needs to just like open the DRS letterbox, and that visor tear off will hopefully disappear from that rear wing. He's going to come down, start finish straight, and start his flying lap is Charles Leclerc. So let's see if he can improve. 12th overall right now. We've got Stroll, Leclerc, Zhou, Tsunoda, and Ricciardo, who would be the 5 drivers to drop out of qualifying right now if it stays as it is. Less than a minute to go in terms of qualifying. These are the final laps from these drivers. Carlos Sainz looking to improve in the Ferrari as well behind his teammate. But Alex Albon, who just jumps up into 5th place. And both of the Williams currently in the top 10. Charles Leclerc not looking ridiculously quick. Neither is Carlos Sainz. They are improving on Lando Norris's time at the top of the grid, but there's going to be a lot of cars that improve their times. Let's see what Charles Leclerc can do. We're on board with the Monegasque He makes his way through 11, 12, 13. He's going to come through and finish the second sector. And he's nearly 4 attempts up on Alex Albon's time. So looking okay from Charles Leclerc. That does put Max Verstappen as the driver at risk, though, in 10th place. The checkered flag has dropped. Lando Norris quickest still. Charles Leclerc only 7th fastest for Charles Leclerc, 127.0. Carlos Sainz improves. That puts his teammate down in 8th place. Carlos Sainz up to 5th. Takes the checkered flag. Hulkenberg has taken the checkered flag for 6th place as well. Yuki Tsunoda just goes 10th fastest. So Yuki Tsunoda under a lot of pressure now and unlikely to make it through, especially as Fernando Alonso then goes 2nd fastest overall, pushes Yuki Tsunoda out. So Tsunoda is out of this qualifying. Max Verstappen looking to improve, though. Currently in the bottom 5 is the current Formula 1 World Championship leader. And he comes across the line and goes 6th fastest overall. Alex Albon comes into the pits. So it's Charles Leclerc, who is now 10th and under pressure. Sargent and Tsunoda have both taken the checkered flag. Lance Stroll isn't looking ridiculously quick, but does go quick enough. He's dropped Charles Leclerc out of qualifying. Zhou Guanyu takes the checkered flag, doesn't improve, and Daniel Ricciardo is going to stay in 5th place. It is Charles Leclerc who drops out of qualifying. The Ferrari dropping out was a 10th off Lance Stroll's time and 5/10 off Lando Norris. Charles Leclerc on the radio straight away understands that he put himself with too much to do maybe, or just the Ferrari not in the right window. Couldn't find the pace needed. And sorry, yeah, P11 is the message to Charles Leclerc. Leclerc then joins Logan Sargent, Yuki Tsunoda, Zhou Guanyu, and Daniel Ricciardo as the 5 drivers to drop out in Q2. They join Valtteri Bottas, Kevin Magnussen, Esteban Ocon, Sergio Perez, and Pierre Gasly as the drivers that dropped out in Q1. So that is going to be our back 10 starting tomorrow's Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc in 11th, just 1 position off those point-scoring places. Logan Sargent starts next to him in 12th. And Tsunoda and Zhou starting next to one another. All Asian, 13th and 14th place. Japanese driver and the Chinese driver there in those positions. Daniel Ricciardo will start just in front of Valtteri Bottas in 16th. Then Magnussen and Ocon on the penultimate row of the grid, with Sergio Perez, Pierre Gasly starting at the back of the pack. After Sergio Perez, that spin in Q1, when he moved on to the soft compound tyres, has cost him dearly. Starts in 19th. Charles Leclerc also just not quite getting the hookup of that lap, not quite being able to put it all together. Cost him there as well. In fact, let me have a little look. Where has it all gone wrong for Charles Leclerc? Charles Leclerc 7th fastest in the first sector, which would have put him good enough to get into the top 10. But you can see there, 12th fastest in the second sector, 12th fastest in the third sector in terms of his best sector timings. That's where it was lost for Charles Leclerc. It was that second half of the lap that really killed the Ferrari's ability to get through. Logan Sargent was also kind of not quite good enough. You see 12th, 11th in terms of his sector times. And the quality that he was able to show. His teammate Alex Albon just sneaking through in 9th place. We will see those top 10 drivers then. It will be Lando Norris, George Russell, Fernando Alonso, Oscar Piastri, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Nico Hulkenberg, Alex Albon, and Lance Stroll battling it out for pole position. Get your predictions in the chat for me, people. It's going to be a very tight and very interesting end to this qualifying session. Could go either way. The rain possibly heading towards us. And we could see something a little bit special here. So we head to Silverstone. Oh. Ah. Lando Norris trying to jump the queue in terms of drivers getting towards their end of their lap. And Lewis Hamilton, ooh, a movement over towards Lando Norris, maybe? Lando Norris says so. I'm not sure, though, from the onboards that Lewis Hamilton really moved that aggressively to try and... And then he overtakes Lando Norris through the final corner anyway, so didn't matter too much. Thank you to the new subscribers, Cherry and Sethu. Appreciate that. If you are new to the channel, where's your thanks for subscribing? I'm very sorry, mate. Very sorry, Leob. I missed it. I was looking the other way. There's a lot of screens in front of me. And I massively apologize. But if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We're on our way to 90,000 subscribers. And if you could hit that like button as well, that'd be absolutely amazing. I haven't checked how many likes we are on currently, but hit that like button is the best way to help out the streams. I feel like the race day result will be very different. Yeah, it's gonna be a very mixed grid, this one, isn't it? And then depending on, well, it depends on what kind of weather conditions again we get tomorrow. There's supposed to be a storm over the course of this evening here in the UK. Whether that rolls in to sort of messing up and possibly swapping around a couple of bits and pieces. Tomorrow, Max Verstappen, though, has damage to the underside of that car, and the Red Bull team trying to put it back together again. Max Verstappen across the gravel. And that was what the damage came from, of course. In Q1, actually went across the gravel exactly where his teammate went off. So the Red Bull maybe just a little bit of a problem through that turn, especially in Q1. And then, yeah, Max Verstappen, you can see a little bit of tape on parts of the floor on that Red Bull. And there's not too much they can do about it. They can, a little bit of front wing adjustment. You can see there going onto Max Verstappen's car. 244. Oh, we are very, very close to that 250 overall. If Stroll wins, I will eat a sock. It's pretty good in the rain, though, as Lance Stroll. Well, he was good once in Turkey that time. Kind of built a reputation off that. Aston finally made progress. Quite possibly. This is their home Grand Prix. I mean, the Aston Martin factory is the closest to Silverstone. I know a lot of the teams are based in the UK, but Silverstone technically the home of Aston Martin. So Aston Martin trying to do their home crowd proud. Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll both getting through into Q3. We're about to get underway. 12 minutes on the clock for Q3. And I think we're going to see a few drivers just kind of wait and watch, not necessarily be the first to blink in terms of this final qualifying session. There hasn't been too much rain since the kind of big downpour before the beginning of the session. Little drizzles here and there through Q1. There wasn't any particular rain through Q2. So I'm expecting this track to dry up that little bit more, be that little bit quicker, and just be almost like a last man out. We'll have the opportunity to set the fastest lap time. But of course, go off of any part of that dry line, and suddenly you're in a big, big trouble. Ferrari is cooked. Sargent was robbed. Charles Leclerc, P11 indeed. And Max Verstappen is going to be that driver to get underway. Daniel Ricciardo walks past the Red Bull garage. And Max Verstappen's going to get there. No, Alex Albon actually jumps the queue a touch. Albon gets out in front of Verstappen. Obviously, the Williams garage further down the pit lane. Verstappen is going to be followed out by Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. Fernando Alonso also joining the queue as well. We're going to see these cars separate out. A little bit of traffic at the end of the pit lane. Thank you for subscribing, George and Earshot. Appreciate that, lads. Fernando Alonso As I said, coming out behind Piastri, Lando Norris then behind him. Carlos Sainz joins the track for the Ferrari, and he will be 6th to set a lap time. Lance Stroll will be 7th. Just keeping an eye on this order. Of course, these are the cars that are going to set their lap times. Albon's going to be first across the start-finish line. Hulkenberg out after Stroll. And Lewis Hamilton now joining, and George Russell still yet to come out of the Mercedes garage. Finally it does. 9 minutes 45 seconds on the clock. Russell joins the track. I think just wanted to leave Hamilton enough of a gap. Hamilton just coming around turn 2 as Russell makes his way onto the track. The two Mercedes cars will be the final two across the start-finish line. So Albon is going to set the standard, and George Russell will technically have the driest of the track surfaces coming out at the end. Verstappen, though, damage to that Red Bull. It does make you wonder where he will slot in. It doesn't feel like Verstappen's going to be, I don't know, never count him out is the thing, right? It was like, with a damaged Red Bull, shouldn't really be in contention for pole position considering how close the lap times have been over the course of the weekend so far, but maybe Max Verstappen can just do it. Verstappen then starts his flying lap. Albon in front of him, Piastri, Alonso, Lando Norris comes across the start-finish line with Carlos Sainz just giving a gap to the McLaren in front. As I said, George Russell is going to be last across the start-finish line, so then we'll get a real idea of where the top 10 are in terms of this first flying lap in Q3, and then they'll get one more bite of the cherry before the session ends. Lando Norris looking very swift. Let's just having a look. Yep, Swift's through the first sector, fastest overall so far, Lando Norris. Albon, Verstappen, Piastri, Alonso would have completed that sector before him, but there, Carlos Sainz then takes the fastest first sector time, and the track is evolving. The track is getting quicker. And as I said, I feel like George Russell coming out of the back of this pack going to have a lovely little run at it. Alex Albon, though, is going to set the standard, and what is it? A 1:27 dead from Albon. Verstappen is going to be next across the line in the Red Bull. Little bit of damage to the floor, but keeps him ahead of Albon, though, by about 6.5 tenths of a second. Piastri across the line goes quickest now, 1:26.2 from Piastri, a tenth quicker than Verstappen. Alonso, what can he do? Goes third fastest overall. Lando Norris is going to be next across the start-finish line. Lando Norris goes quickest by 2 tenths to his teammate. So it's Lando Norris on provisional pole right now. Lewis Hamilton, though, has just gone fastest than anybody in the first sector. Where does Carlos Sainz slot in? He goes fourth fastest behind Verstappen. We've still got Stroll to come across the start-finish line and see where he slots in. 5th place ahead of his teammate Fernando Alonso. Drops Alex Albon to 7th place. Nico Hulkenberg, Russell and Hamilton still to come. Here comes Nico Hulkenberg. Round 17 and 18, sorry. And across the start-finish line goes 4th fastest as Nico Hulkenberg in the Haas slots himself in ahead of the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. There goes Lewis Hamilton. Oh, it's very close. Couple attempts off Lando Norris. He was quickest in the first and in the third sector. And there comes George Russell across the start-finish line by 6 thousandths of a second. Takes a provisional pole. And it is an all-British front three. 1, 2, 3. George Russell, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton. Oscar Piastri behind in 4th place is Mercedes and McLaren, looking like the cars that are going to be battling for this final pole position place here in the Silverstone Grand Prix weekend. Max Verstappen came home 5th, still ahead of Hulkenberg, Sainz, Stroll, Alonso and Albon, rounding out the top 10 as it was. 5.5 minutes on the clock then. The drivers will make their way around. Of course, only provisional pole right now. Got another bite of the cherry for these drivers. Max Verstappen wheeling his Red Bull back into the Red Bull garage now. Let's see. Oh, just got all over the curbs, does Max Verstappen. I mean, it's all right. Didn't lost him a lot of time, but you look at the margins. He's only a 10th behind Oscar Piastri. Piastri then 2 tenths off pole. It's going to be very tight between those drivers towards the top end of the grid. I mean, can it get much tighter? George Russell and Lando Norris, 0.006 of a second between them. Of course, remember back to Canada, we saw George Russell take pole position with an identical time to Max Verstappen in Canada. Could we see something similar today? We are very, very close to identical times between Russell and Lando Norris. When it's less than 100th of a second, that really is the smallest of small margins. But the cars get wheeled back into their pit boxes. There is George Russell, our provisional pole sitter, comes back into the Mercedes garage. And the top 10 reads like this. Russell, Norris, Hamilton are provisional podium places for tomorrow. Piastri in 4th place will start on the 2nd row beside Hamilton. Verstappen and Hülkenberg would be the 3rd row of the grid, 5th and 6th place. Then it's Carlos Sainz and Lance Stroll behind in 7th and 8th. Fernando Alonso and Alex Albon in 9th and 10th place. Although those 10 drivers will get one more run here in Silverstone during Q3 with 3.5 minutes left to go. The bottom 10 then, the drivers that haven't made it through to this pole position shootout is Charles Leclerc will start in 11th, Logan Sargent in 12th, Yuki Tsunoda 13th, Zhou Guanyu 14th, Daniel Ricciardo 15th, Valtteri Bottas 16th place. He was the first driver to drop out of Q1 with Kevin Magnussen 17th, Esteban Ocon 18th, Sergio Perez after that spin in the Red Bull will start 19th, and Pierre Gasly will start at the back of the pack for the Alpine in 20th spot. They are the 10 that are guaranteed, but let's see who is going to get pole position here. Max Verstappen is heading out into the pit lane. So is George Russell there. Lewis Hamilton will be ahead of his teammate, though. And we'll give you the rundown of the 10 cars that are going to be there. Oscar Piastri actually waiting for the 2 Mercedes to make their way past. So Piastri wanting to be behind the Mercedes, although Carlos Sainz then comes behind Oscar Piastri as well. Everybody wants to be last out on track, but still with enough time to get that lap time in. 2.5 minutes to go. Alex Albon is going to once again be the first driver across the start-finish line. Lance Stroll is then behind him. Nico Hülkenberg will be 3rd. And Max Verstappen is actually the 4th driver on the road. Hamilton just leaving the end of the pits will be just behind Verstappen. Then it's going to be Lando Norris 5th across, 6th across the start-finish line. George Russell behind Lando Norris. And got the Aston Martin of, I think that's Fernando Alonso. Yeah, it must be Fernando Alonso trying to sneak in between a couple of cars in the pit lane if he can. 2 minutes left to go. Lando Norris 2nd fastest by 0.006 of a second. And George Russell, our provisional pole sitter, is behind him. So it's Albon, Stroll, Hülkenberg, Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris. Then it will be Russell. Sainz and Piastri have come out very, very close to one another. I think Fernando Alonso is even in that mix as well. Sainz, Alonso, Piastri all vying for that final position on the grid. It's going to be very close between them, actually, with only a minute left to go on the clock. And they're only just making their way through turn 6 and turn 7. They're still squabbling for position. Here we go then, the final rundown. Alex Albon's going to get us underway for these final flying laps. If you are enjoying this, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you're here as well. Trying to get to 300 likes, the builder. 274 currently. Come on, guys. You definitely get it up to 300. If you haven't hit it, hit that button. Hülkenberg then comes across the start-finish line to start his final flying lap. 6th fastest on the first run. Can he improve? Max Verstappen, 5th fastest overall so far. He's starting his final flying lap. A little bit of damage, though, remember, to that Red Bull car. We've got Russell, Sainz, Alonso, and Piastri all battling for position at the back of the pack. I think Hamilton and Norris are going to be very happy not to be part of that because Lando Norris is going to start his final flying lap with 15 seconds on the clock. George Russell then, our provisional pole sitter, has just come across the start-finish line. Sainz and Piastri have come across the line together. Is Fernando Alonso going to make it? Yes, just about. So we will get all 10 cars with one more flying lap each. See then, Alex Albon. Lap times again a little bit quicker. Hamilton actually slower than himself through the first sector, but quicker than Russell. Lando Norris not quick through the first sector either. No one really looking like they are going to improve too dramatically. Verstappen not with a personal best through the first sector. Hamilton no personal best. Norris no personal best. That's a little bit better from Max Verstappen. He's still a 10th off George Russell's time, though, as he comes through the second sector. Albon and Stroll have taken the checkered flag. Albon 9th fastest now. Stroll jumps in front of him, goes 8th fastest. Hulkenberg jumps in front of Verstappen and goes 5th fastest overall. It's going to be Max Verstappen, though, across the start-finish line next. And it's not good enough for pole position or anywhere close. Verstappen 4th fastest now, but with a lot of drivers behind him still yet to finish their lap. George Russell's gone quickest through the middle sector of anybody. Hamilton across the line goes fastest. Hamilton takes provisional pole then, takes the checkered flag. Lando Norris comes into the pits. Must have made a mistake somewhere and decided to cancel that lap. Can George Russell take it? Yes! George Russell back on pole, and it is a Mercedes front row at this moment in time. Carlos Sainz comes across the line, doesn't improve. Piastri goes 5th fastest, and Fernando Alonso goes into the pit lane. It is George Russell who takes the provisional pole position. Then Hamilton will slot in behind him. Wow. What a stunning end from George Russell there. A great lap from the Briton, and it is an all-British front three. Russell, Hamilton, Norris in that top 3 positions. Verstappen will start on 4th place on the second row. Again, beside Lando Norris. We'll see how those two follow one another down towards turn 1 tomorrow. It'll get tasty there, I am sure. Oscar Piastri and Nico Hulkenberg, the 3rd row of the grid. Carlos Sainz and Lance Stroll, 7th and 8th place. Albon in 9th and Alonso in 10th place, starting in the points tomorrow. Charles Leclerc is 11th fastest in qualifying and will start in 11th place, dropped out in Q2. He was joined by Sargent and Tsunoda, Zhou Guanyu and Daniel Ricciardo, who dropped out in Q2. They'll be 11th through 15th tomorrow. Valtteri Bottas will be 16th, the first driver to drop out of Q1. And Kevin Magnussen and Esteban Ocon, Sergio Perez and Pierre Gasly at the back of the pack. What an incredible qualifying that was. We had the intermediate tyres, we had spins, we had mistakes, we had damage to Red Bulls. And Lando Norris starts in 3rd place with Lewis Hamilton 2nd, with George Russell taking the pole position. All 3 of the British drivers in the front 3 positions. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If you have enjoyed this, I will be live for the race tomorrow as well, covering every single lap of the Silverstone Grand Prix. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that. Make sure you hit a like on this video as well if you have enjoyed it. Subscribe, as I just said, to the channel if you are new. Make sure that you are here. If you want to do me a favor, massive favor would be hit the first link in the description. I made a video about how that collision between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris that might come to fruition tomorrow with them starting next to one another again. Those two, how that was inevitable that they were eventually going to have that collision in Austria. How the Red Bull has slowly sort of dropped off the pace in comparison to last season. The McLaren has been really jumping up in terms of pace. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, hit that first link in the description. Or even if you could just open it up in another tab, let it roll in the background. And that would be absolutely amazing. Supports the channel more than you can imagine. As I said, we are live once again tomorrow. George Russell, a fist pump on top of his Mercedes car. And we will see if he can hold on to the victory in front of his home crowd tomorrow. I will see you then.